Picture this. It's 1:05 a.m. and you've had an incredibly average night. Your mate who always pulls has inevitably pulled. You're stuck with the other unattractive mates doing the cloakroom song and dance before heading out into the rain and hitting up the nearest trustworthy greasy grub joint. You order your favourite, 4 wings and chips please boss man, and a falafel wrap for your skint mate whose missus has bullied him into going vegan for the month. You sort out your change and you head to the bus stop. After waiting around 17 minutes for your bus, you attempt to board, but the bus driver shakes his head. No food, mate. You should know the rules by now. This dystopian future is closer than we think. People are campaigning to ban the consumption of food on public transport. Welcome back to Bluntly Put. Eating on public transport is a divisive issue. It's inconsiderate, it's smelly, it's rude, right? But what if it's cold food? And what if I'm hungry? And what if I won't have any more downtime today? Generally, the debate is centered around respect for your fellow travelers and generally targets hot and smelly food. Most people will agree that sitting next to someone devouring a Twix Extra isn't the worst thing in the world, unless they do the weird thing where they lick off all the chocolate and suck out the caramel before taking on the biscuit. Freaks. Now, from this perspective, both sides of the debate are easy to sympathise with. What's a little more tricky to understand? KFC on buses being blamed for skyrocketing levels of childhood obesity. Yeah. Recently, healthcare professionals have suggested that banning snacking on public transport would be a big step in the battle against childhood obesity. Professor Dame Sally Davies says that 6 out of every 30 children in the UK are obese, and it's because they are being flooded with junk food. Now, you may think to yourself at this point, like any normal person would, how will banning snacks on the tube stop kids from being obese? The thinking behind the proposal is that a ban on eating on trains and buses would encourage kids to stop overindulging in fatty foods and fizzy drinks whilst they're out and about on the move. Dame Davies did acknowledge that there would need to be exceptions to the rule. Prohibit eating and drinking on urban public transport except fresh water, breastfeeding, and for medical conditions. I, for one, am glad to know that babies and diabetics are safe from Dame Davies and her granola bar agenda. In Wolverhampton, which is one of the worst places for child obesity in the country, Man Surtha said that a public transport snack ban would not solve any problems. I think children need to be more active, said the 29-year-old postgraduate student at the University of Wolverhampton. In London, people are more aware of their health, children seem to be more active, but here all I see is children hanging out around takeaways, eating all the time, and then they go home. And there's a real problem with gaming addiction too. I don't think the answer is banning food on public transport, because even though they might not eat on the bus, for example, they'll still eat it outside, won't they? Man makes a good point. Underage drinking is entirely illegal, and we definitely have a problem with it in this country. Most of us have an underage memory of being huddled together in the rain, in a park, sipping on Glen's vodka. No, this is not directly taken from my childhood. I had exemplary taste. It was absolute vodka at the very minimum. None of us were stopped by it being forbidden. None of us were stopped by it being banned. Another objection to the proposals is that a lot of the discussion around banning food on public transport is steeped in privilege and reeks of classist undertones. Who gets public transport? Who would need to eat on the bus going somewhere? Poorer people. People who work multiple jobs. People who potentially might not have another opportunity to eat on that day. It's been correctly pointed out that a lot of the people who are in support of the ban, such as Dame Davies, probably don't get public transport all that often. An idea here could be not axing free school meals, or supporting parents with less disposable income, reinstating incentives like EMA. No? Okay, let's go back to policing kebabs. This lack of real-life experience with public transport is probably the reason that the people in support of the ban think it can even be effectively enforced. Drinking on public transport has been illegal in London since 2008, but most people, and by most people I definitely do mean me this time, do it on a weekly basis. In fact, the rule on drinking on public transport is so loosely enforced that when Labour MP for Hackney, Diane Abbott, was lambasted in the press for drinking M&S Mojito on the Overground, a bunch of people came out of the woodwork to admit they too didn't even know it wasn't allowed. Messages of support flooding in for the UK's most vilified MP. That's got to mean something, right? One Twitter user even pointed out that anyone who could survive the Central line during rush hour should get a free mojito just for making it through to work. Mojitos aside, I'm not sure if I want to live in a world where I can't eat some chips on the bus when I'm smashed. Surely the responsibility for educating children about healthy eating is the responsibility of their parents. So, banning the consumption of fast food on public transport. A masterstroke of genius in the battle against childhood obesity? Or the brainchild of a woman so out of touch with the everyday she actually thinks that anyone who actually needs to use public transport would let you take their ham and cheese toastie without a fight? What do you think?